Spoiler alert, your team hates manual unloading. And who can blame them? It's slow, risky, and exhausting. Tawi's container unloader eliminates the pain. Lifting loads safely and efficiently from inside containers. Engineered to lift heavy goods ergonomically from deep inside containers, it accelerates unloading while keeping your team safe from strain. Safer workers, faster turnaround, and better efficiency. Better for your people, better for your bottom line. Lift smarter. Visit Tawi.com today. That's TAWI.com.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hey guys, it's Kevin, and I'm here at ProMat 2025, and I am in the Paccurate booth, and I'm going to be joined by, of course, CEO and co-founder James Malley of Paccurate, and we're going to talk a little bit about Paccurate. More specifically, we're going to talk about kind of this slew of partnerships that they've been doing and what that means for their customers, how that takes Paccurate and their solution to the next level, and how it helps to impact that end consumer more. So, James, first off, thanks for letting me come to your booth.
Absolutely, thanks for coming.
Definitely, it's always a pleasure to see you. Always good to catch up with you at these conferences and in between, whether it's randomly on the street in New York City, like earlier this year.
Yeah.
But it's always great to catch up and learn what's the latest with you guys. So maybe for people that aren't familiar, just give us kind of quick, brief overview of Paccurate.
Sure. Paccurate is a packing intelligence platform, and it's a little buzzwordy, but basically what it means is we use software to help optimize packaging and software to help optimize packing.
Right, and a big part of that is the cartonization, right?
So we had a cartonization algorithm 11 years ago that we just made kind of as a side hustle because we had some shipper clients that were getting hammered on dimensional weight fees, and so we never thought it could be like its own company. We were just like, let's just build this thing, we'll make a slick algorithm, and it won't change our lives that much. But then 4 years ago,
Fast forward,
pandemic hits, this is suddenly a crisis, we happen to be there with this solution. And so really we kind of parlayed the growth from that into building out a broader platform of tools.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's been really interesting to see you guys continue to grow and start seeing like the Paccurate name everywhere, right? And I think when people think about that cartonization and optimizing at the pack station, Paccurate's name is typically in that conversation, right? But now, recently we've seen that you had Pack Health that came out, right, which we talked about at Manifest together a little bit. But now you're also kind of going through these partnerships as well, and I think most recently you announced a partnership with Cardex, SVT Robotics, who's Cardex right behind us conveniently, right? And pretty damn quick, I think I saw too, and I think you're announcing here at the show another partnership with Logua, right?
That's right.
So I guess tell us a little bit about, what does the partnership mean for Paccurate? And then we'll talk a little bit about each one kind of individually and what that does.
Yeah. Well, for us, partnerships are really everything. For a couple reasons. One, the biggest friction point with any API-driven product is obviously integration. So, a company may say, wow, Paccurate, your stuff is great, this ROI looks insane, we checked it out, it's real. Only thing is my IT team has like a 2-year roadmap. So call us back, we're so excited.
Yeah.
And so, when we first started, we would call it phase 2-itis, where, this is gonna be part of phase 2, and then it would just never happen. So once we started partnering with, specifically WMS companies, like best-in-class WMS providers. Then if you can have like a turnkey solution, you don't need to spend as long on proving the value. You can just say, just turn it on and measure it. And so from our standpoint, it just makes it easier for our customers to get up and going. But I think some of the other partners you mentioned, cartonization has it kind of sits in between a lot of other concerns.
Right.
And so there's applicability with, ASRS process design. Pack size is a great partner because there's heavy applicability with on-demand packaging.
Yeah.
And cartonization is often a small prerequisite to really delivering exceptional ROI for those solutions, but it's a really down the rabbit hole kind of problem. So if we can partner and kind of insert ourselves into that piece of the problem, it makes for great upside for both companies.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it's really interesting that you touched on that, because that's certainly something I experienced in my career when I was in the warehouse. It's like, oh, we have this solution we found, it's going to have all this benefit, and IT's like, we can't deal with that right now, right? And so I think, naturally what you're saying is kind of like packaging Paccurate almost together with some of these other solutions that, are more, maybe there's more awareness around, in a sense, right? It's an easy way to kind of get that in and get those people to realize the benefit and kind of see it, right?
Yeah, and there are cases where we can, just by putting our stuff, which is kind of lightweight relative to a lot of other these kind of hardcore automation solutions, if we can help in the beginning with the business case, with shortening that payback period, that's really everything. It's like, this is the time to put it in, is when you're using it to justify a bigger improvement.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that makes a lot of sense, and the latest going to be here announced is Logiwa, right? So that kind of ties into what you talked about some of those best-in-class WMSs and how to roll that out with that. But I'm curious about the partnership with Cardex and how that kind of comes together, and where does that come into play with some of Cardex's solutions?
Sure. So as you know, Cardex AutoStore is a prominent AutoStore implementer, and they've I think become known for kind of like pushing the boundaries with what they do on the periphery, kind of adjacencies to the actual system that they install. And so this is just one of those points where what happens right after the goods come out of the AutoStore? We need to figure out how to pack it. And so if you can say, not only will I speed up your picking by X amount, but I'll lower your transportation costs at the same time without trying too hard, if I can bring Paccurate in at the same time. So, like I said before, it's really that business case. If we can be part of a balanced breakfast, that's kind of the approach.
A balanced warehouse breakfast,
yes,
right?
Yeah, definitely, exactly, with your Wheaties.
Interesting, and you touched on there too, being able to lower that transportation cost as well, right? So, I mean, there's one side of the argument where you're looking at this cartonization, right, and certainly you're reducing the amount of corrugate or cardboard you're using, or maybe packing material in general. But tell us about how does that extend beyond the four walls into that transportation?
Sure. Transportation savings is like, 70% of the savings of doing something like what we have.
Yeah.
Packaging is important, and I was just talking to somebody about this, but packaging used to be just kind of the cost of doing business.
Right.
But now it's become much more important, especially as shareholders want you to use greener materials, and you're like, fine, but is that on my budget as an operations person?
Yeah, it sounds expensive.
And they're like, yes, it is.
Yeah.
So using only the packaging you need is important for cost and for sustainability. But when you can bring in a kind of goods-to-person solution of any kind, whether it's ASRS or otherwise, and say, oh, by the way, I'm going to take a big bite out of the transportation cost, which is the biggest cost that any shipper has. So the way we kind of figured out that doing advanced cartonization like this, or having a platform like this, it'll save you pretty much the same amount of money in total as like an AMR system. with none of the risk, basically.
Yeah. Interesting, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it's very interesting to think about that because the dividends kind of downstream continue to pay off in a sense, right? If you think about, that transportation area, because really you're taking a lot of that air out of the package, right? And you're shipping a lot less of that void space, essentially, right? Which can be huge savings over time, right? So tell us a little bit about, I'd love to hear like on that side, right? Because obviously there's the packaging side, which we kind of talked about here. But on the transportation side, I mean, I'd love to hear like, some of maybe like the biggest impact you've seen on like the transportation side of things.
Oh man. So for transportation savings, kind of the rule of thumb is the lower volume you are, the higher percentage you'll save. So I think the most we've seen is like 20% saved on transportation. So that's for, a small brand. As you get bigger and bigger and bigger and you're in the top like 100 shippers, you might be only dealing with like 4% savings on transportation, but the dollar amount associated with that is obviously quite large. Especially relative to something that is so lightweight. So that's kind of what we see. I think the average transportation savings is around 6% if they're coming from, kind of last generation cartonization to ours, which is more modern. And that tends to be the reason that there's two reasons people come in hot and heavy, ready to implement. Transportation savings. The other one is the CEO called, they saw a viral TikTok post of a badly packed box, and it's terrible for their brand, and they're demanding it gets fixed immediately.
Yeah,
and so
absolutely.
you'd be surprised how many cartonization emergencies.
Cartonization emergency, yeah. Pick up the Paccurate hotline, right?
Yeah, exactly, the red phone.
Yeah, I think it's such an interesting thing because it does like the consumer has such a voice now, right? I mean, they had a voice before, but now their voice is like amplified. Yeah. Whether they have a big audience or not a big audience, like that type of thing, right, can catch the CEO's attention. It can be out there, and now all of a sudden everybody's like, they're not very sustainable, or they don't do this, or they don't do that. And I think it's interesting to hear that, like, you have that cartonization emergency, as you said, and how that catches the attention for looking for a solution like this.
Do you have a big Gen Z audience?
Do we have a big Gen Z audience? My students are all Gen Z.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, they might be interested to know, and maybe they can relate, that Gen Z is the first generation that will actually make changes to their buying behavior if they perceive a brand to be wasteful. Like I'm like an elder millennial. Yeah. I get a badly packed box. I just like kind of whine about it.
Yeah.
But they actually will not, potentially high likelihood of them not buying from you again. So that's a problem for something that, previously, they may have just thought the cost of doing business, they ran out of boxes, or DIMs were bad, or now you're going to get churn.
Yeah.
So Gen Z is driving some change there.
Interesting, yeah. I think it's really interesting too, because I think the velocity at which they consume as well is much higher, right? Because they're used to now like all these, fast fashion, low cost, quick things. They're viral. I'm gonna get it, and then I'm over it in 3 weeks, and then I get something else, right? So I mean that has such a wider amplification as well. So it's very interesting that you pointed that out there. So really interesting stuff with you here, James, and really appreciate you having me come to the booth. But if we look here, we're at ProMat, right? It's day one as we're recording this. But what do you think is some of the kind of buzz here, especially around cartonization and that packing area?
Yeah, I'm not a robotics person, but I am like a fan. So this is like my favorite show of the year, because I just like stand there, kind of drool, kind of coming out and watch all the crazy stuff. Yeah. I think related to cartonization, I'm kind of fascinated in general with ASRS systems, trying to hook up to on-demand packaging machines and navigating all the gotchas of like trying to do something like that. So, I think our partnership with Cardex comes at like the perfect time that's like something shippers are flirting with.
Interesting, definitely. And we'll definitely be checking out some of those solutions here as well, but it's great to catch up with you, James, and learn more about what's going on in the latest with Paccurate. If people want to learn more about Paccurate, what's the best way to do that?
Well, if they're here, wait, when does this come out? Later?
Yeah, it's coming out later, yeah.
All right, well, you can't come to our booth because this is later. But you can go to Paccurate.io, and everything about Paccurate is there.
All right, definitely. So thanks to James for allowing me to come to his booth and recording with us and giving us the latest on Paccurate and some of those great partnerships, and also how to save some money not only on that packaging but also on your brand awareness as well, and then on the transportation side too. So really appreciate it, James, and hope you have a good rest of the show.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Enjoyed this episode? Make sure you are subscribed to the podcast, and for more content from the New Warehouse, find us on LinkedIn and YouTube. Links to subscribe can be found in the show notes, and for everything The New Warehouse, head to thenewwarehouse.com.